If I know at the end of the day I didn't do something and someone's making some bullshit up, I'm gonna come out and fucking defend myself.
And then at one point he said, if nothing is going to happen, then what's the point? What's the point? I don't know, maybe I could be one of your friends. Maybe I can just be someone that you kiss. Never, ever have I rejected someone's touches and they said, well, if nothing's gonna happen, what's the point? Like, what?
Many of us are deeply conditioned, whether we've examined it or not, to think, oh, well, if I don't believe in monogamy, then I believe in sleeping with as many people as possible. That's the default or even only alternate proposition. You will hear Christians, Muslims, and Jews arguing against atheism, or even just arguing against a more free-spirited approach to religion in your private life by saying, well, if you don't believe in this, if you don't live with the fear of hell after you die to deter you, then you're going to end up like Jake Paul.
Anyone who makes some false bullshit claims about me, I will chase it to the very fucking end and prove my innocence. And again, my character from years from now will show that this person and this individual is completely lying.
There is absolutely no discourse in our society at any level about doing numbers and about doing finite numbers.
This is the point where if what he wanted is sex, he sees he's not gonna get it. This is the point where we would just go elsewhere. But that is not what he did. When he got up, he undid his pants and grabbed my face and started fucking my face.
Hi. If you're new around here, my method of recording commentary videos is to provide an opinion, an analysis, and a set of reflections that's still going to seem meaningful to me if I come back and watch the video 5 years from now when I've completely forgotten the controversy of the moment. If you're watching this 50 years from now, and if you're watching this 5 minutes from now, you have no idea who Jake Paul is, stick with the video, because we're going to talk about some issues that are still going to be relevant to your life, whether you're watching this 5 minutes, 5 years, or 500 years from now. Because we're dealing with questions that come very close to the human heart, to non-negotiable, tragically impossible to change aspects of human nature. The story in the news today is that there is a young woman who claims that Jake Paul raped her. And Jake Paul says that he doesn't remember having sexual relations with her at all. I'd like to start this video by pointing out that those two versions of events are not mutually exclusive. It's quite possible that the young lady's story is entirely true and accurate, and that Jake Paul doesn't remember it. It's entirely plausible that Jake Paul has slept with so many young women whom he met or recruited from Instagram over so many days and so many months and so many years that he doesn't really remember meeting this particular young woman at all, or what happened on that particular night. That's actually not even implausible. The purpose of this video is not to go into the details of the young woman's account, but I would point out that if this does go to court, she's already mentioned several witnesses. If those witnesses back up her story, I think she has a very good chance of prevailing in a court of law. I see nothing implausible, nothing incoherent, nothing wrong with her version of events. But it's the other side of the equation I here want to question, because I think it's much more meaningful and relevant to our lives, what we're going to learn from this, what we're going to have to apply going forward for us, the nameless, faceless morass of the audience. It was a very different controversy involving a stand-up comedian called Chris D'Elia, and a fellow vegan YouTuber made some commentary videos. I can give you a link to her channel, Maggie Sargent. Maggie talked about her own experience working in a stand-up comedy club, and she had the honesty to talk about her own experience sleeping with quite a number of stand-up comedians in quite a number of one-night stands. So this type of honesty is rare, but that's what we come on YouTube to hear, right? And then on the other side of it, Chris D'Elia, the stand-up comedian who was the center of a controversy, in defending himself, he chose to be honest about the extent to which he had slept with large numbers of random women as he went from nightclub to nightclub, from town to town. At one point in his confession, he states that, look, for each city he went to, for each gig, there were at least 50 women on Instagram where he was responding to them and trying to arrange to meet at a hotel or get into bed with them. I do not think the point is that he successfully met up with 50, but the point is in each city there might have been 2 or 3 or 5 or 10. He was doing numbers as he went from town to town. Now, it's easy to lose sight of the millennium-long context these moral fables unfold in, right? Over the course of many centuries, we have been conditioned to embrace one of two paradigms, one of which is absolute monogamy, no sex until marriage, and then total commitment to only having sex with one person for the rest of your life. And the other is the rejection of that paradigm, implicitly or explicitly embracing an infinite number of partners. Many of us are deeply conditioned, whether we've examined it or not, to think, oh, well, if I don't believe in monogamy, then I believe in sleeping with as many people as possible. That's the default or even only alternate proposition. And you will hear Christians, Muslims, and Jews arguing against atheism, or even just arguing against a more free-spirited approach to religion in your private life by saying, well, if you don't believe in this, if you don't live with the fear of hell after you die to deter you, then you're going to end up like Jake Paul. You're going to end up like Chris D'Elia, sleeping with huge numbers of people, going from town to town. There is absolutely no discourse in our society at any level about doing numbers and about doing finite numbers. And I think it's going to be very clear to you that in this video, I'm not giving advice for people who have a whole lot in common with myself. And most people don't have very much in common with myself. But, sometimes I do talk to young men who have a lot more in common with Jake Paul than they have in common with me. If I were talking to Jake Paul face to face, if he happened to be a cousin of mine or something, because we certainly wouldn't be friends, let's suppose for whatever reason he's somebody I get to sit down and talk to once in a while. We're somehow connected through family or business or something. I might say to him, Jake, have you ever thought about how profoundly different your life would be if you let yourself sleep with 5 women per year? This may sound kind of ridiculous and perplexing in the audience, but it only seems ridiculous because we have no cultural familiarity with this going back over centuries and millennia, right? Oh, for a guy like that, a guy who both admittedly from his perspective and notoriously in terms of his former girlfriends complaining about him, the complaints from his girlfriends were that even when he was swearing that he was being monogamous in a sense, that he was actually meeting up with and sleeping with other women once every few days. Some accounts say it's a different girl every day. But in any case, more than one girl a month, many dozens or large numbers of girls per year. This is what's reported for him, and I don't really think he denies those rumors. Perhaps even relishes the notoriety for the large numbers of women. What if you limited yourself to 5? Now, for many of you in the audience, to sleep with 5 different people per year every year would be an unimaginably high number that might seem tremendously impersonal, right? You say, oh, well, what? So you only know somebody for maybe a month or 2 and then you're on to the next one? Well, I'm not saying you plan it that way. But for someone in Jake Paul's position who has the power and the wealth and the fame and the privilege to contact any number of Instagram models. What if, when it's January 1st, it's the start of a new year, you say to yourself, you know what? This year, there are only going to be 5. Each one you pick, now suddenly, you're going to put a lot more energy and attention into picking them, right? Now suddenly it's not just going to be, oh, well, she looks cute enough or she looks attractive enough, right? Now there's actually going to be some soul searching. If there are only going to be 5 maximum this year, do I really like this person? Do I really want to get to know this person? Is this somebody I want to know for like a whole 2 months? Is there, I know this may sound surreal to many of you, but to have a guy like that ask himself, is this someone I have enough in common with that I'm going to want to know them for 2 months, for a 2-month relationship, rather than a 2-day, 1-night relationship, right? As opposed to 1-night stands or whatever. And if you try your hardest to have meaningful relations with 5 people, the year ain't over yet, you're stuck. You made a vow. So now, for however many months are left in the year, Jake, either you got to wait it out in celibacy, reflect on, think about how you managed to screw up 5 different relationships that year, or you look back at those 5 from the past and think, is it worth it maybe? Should I go back and should I try again with this one or that one, right? Can you imagine in what a subtle and profound way the whole life of someone like Jake Paul would change if he had a finite limit to his womanizing? Even if, you know what, if it's 5 per year, after 10 years, that's 50 people, but still it might be closer to 5 real relationships. Now, when people come to treat one another as disposable, even with the best of intentions, situations like this, situations like Jake Paul facing criminal charges for some kind of sexual assault or some kind of rape, we'll see what the charges are. Okay. Not only can things like that happen, it is very believable to me that the men involved may have become so accustomed to sleeping with a rotating door of one anonymous Instagram model after another that they would not even remember the particulars of what happened with the particular girl. What is it now? A year and a half later, right? This is the terrible thing about the friends you choose to have, the friends you choose to reject, right? Your romantic relations with other people. With time, you're training yourself, you're conditioning yourself, you're transforming yourself to be a different person. There's another type of person you become. And yet, people talk about pimping like it's a joke. It's no joke, right? Is that who you want to become? Do you want to become a pimp? Do you want to become a whoremonger? Do you want to become someone who's a serial consumer of aspiring models, exploiting their hopes and dreams for fame, self-promotion, or at least employment, to get into bed with one after another to the point where you don't really remember their names or their faces or how you met or whether or not you met at all? And again, do you think Chris D'Elia could pass a pop quiz? If he was sending 50 different women messages trying to get into bed with them, with each city and each town he went to on tour, right? And think about what a difference it would be if instead of 50 women a week, it was 5 women per year. And what a difference it would be for everyone involved. Of course, not just for the famous man or question of sense, but of course for the women themselves. It's not just quantitatively that you're changing your relationships, it's qualitatively. And I think there are a lot of obvious ways in which, with the passage of time, qualitatively, you're changing who you are. You're changing yourself. Now, my regular viewers absolutely hate it when I tell anecdotes about my own personal life, my own dating life, my own sex life, or my own lack of a sex life. But there was a woman of about 30 years of age who was trying to get into bed with me. And, she said words to the effect that I was a special person to her. She wasn't terribly poetic about it. And I wasn't entirely clear at that time where this flattery was going, but soon enough thereafter, it became clear for what reason and in what way she was telling me that I was a special person to her. And, at the time she approached me, she had a complex situation with breaking up with an ex-boyfriend and then getting back together with him a year later, and then it not working out and breaking up again. And I asked, it was just within the confines of this conversation. It's like, she was talking about different permutations of this, and the fact she stated that she had slept with other men during the time when she'd been broken up with this guy. And I asked, well, okay, but, so it's about 1 year. I mean, how many partners did you have, between when you broke up and when you tried to get back together again? I was honestly just counseling her, about how to make it work if she's getting back together with a guy or what's going on. And, she said 12. And she was like, no, wait. There were several others. And then I forget, it goes up to 14, 15, right? The numbers keep climbing as she sits and thinks about it, right? Okay, no shade. We all make choices. We all live with the consequences, right? But obviously, if this woman is approaching me, and as became clear not that long thereafter, this woman is trying to have a high commitment, monogamous relationship with me. And she's telling me I'm a special person. Right? Well, how special am I? When you broke up with your boyfriend, there were about 15 other guys you went to before me. And now you're coming to me. Now you're knocking on my door. Now you're trying to get this me. Really? So, I'm special to you, but really I'm not that special. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm not hating the player, and I'm not hating the game. I'm not. I'm asking you, really, what kind of person do you want to be, and what kind of person are you going to become when you live this way? All right? It's not just Jake Paul. It's not just Chris D'Elia who have this kind of lifestyle open to them, who have these kinds of options. Okay? When I was living in Thailand, I knew guys who were a lot uglier than I am, who were doing numbers, right? I knew one guy who lost his virginity with a prostitute. And I could just see it. You could just smell it on him. He was just dripping with it. And it wasn't that he only slept with prostitutes. He went to nightclubs and so on and so forth. He had all these different relationships with women. But you really couldn't shake the feeling that he had been conditioned, or he had conditioned himself, to pretty much treat all women as prostitutes. That was pretty much how he lived his life. I'm not going to get into the details of how I knew that guy, I know. I grew up listening to rap music. We've all heard a lot about pimping and commercialized sexuality and these kinds of things, right? You got to look in the mirror and ask yourself, who do you want to be and who you're going to become, where this is going, what the subjective and objective consequences are for you. And ironically, Chris D'Elia, he reached that breaking point where the main thing he had to reflect on was that he's now a parent and he doesn't want his own son to grow up to be like him. He's ashamed to talk to his own wife about these things, and he's ashamed to talk to his own wife or his own daughter about the life he used to live and that he lived for many years living right out of this. Okay, interesting perspective. And a lot of people in this audience who feel they've never had this choice, they've never had this option, they've never had the option of it being 50 people a year or 100 people a year, say, yeah, you know what, the morality lecture, I get it to some extent, but why don't you let me also make the mistakes Chris D'Elia and Jake Paul have made, and then I'll get enlightened and sensitive and moral afterwards. Afterwards, I'll seek out my own moral rectitude after I've been through 100 Instagram models or whatever it is, right? But the part you don't know, the part you can never know, is what's going to be left of you, right, after the 100 Instagram models have come and gone. And I think in a real sense, I mean, you can look into Jake Paul's eyes as he's making these denials now, as he's making these public statements of his moral purity. He's claiming to have no responsibility for that. No. You can look at Jake Paul and ask yourself, what's left of you, Jake? And 10 years ago, whenever you got on this fame and success bandwagon, I don't know, was it 20 years already? You know, is this who you wanted to be? Is this who you wanted to become? And I don't mean, is this who you wanted to be known as publicly? I'm not asking, is this the public reputation you wanted to have? I'm asking, is this who you wanted to be? Okay? Now, the reality is, a whole lot of us, whether you live in Thailand or you live in Los Angeles, if you are just a good-looking guy or a good-looking female and you're ready to do the work, you're ready to make the effort, you probably could have a sex life as dissipated as Jake Paul or Chris D'Elia. It won't be easy. It won't be cheap. It won't be quick. It won't be passive. It'll be, in a real sense, you know, your life's work. And I think the greatest tragedy of all is that people don't do that for the sake of sex, and they don't do it for the sake of love, and they don't do it for the sake of friendship even. You know, the people who live that way, at the end of that process, I don't think they have a lot of friends in their lives. You know, I don't think they have a lot of love in their lives. I think they do those things tragically for self-esteem. They do it in order to feel good about themselves. They do it so that they can feel they have something to be proud of. And tragically, that goes down to and including the guys sleeping with prostitutes in Thailand. It's something they brag about. It's something they feel they've accomplished, like climbing a mountain, right? And then there are only two ways that story can end, right? Either it ends with you actually feeling ashamed, feeling disgust for the man you've become, feeling despicable in your own eyes, feeling despised by your own wife or your own children, as the case may be, like Chris D'Elia, right? Or you look in the mirror and figure out that you're a scumbag like Jake Paul, and right down to the marrow of your bones, you ain't got no sense, you ain't got no shame at all.
My slang is editorial, explicit material, briefcase show, live and stereo flow, feel me.